Hello, and welcome to Chapter 5, Movement. Pretty much everything you need to know to get around is going to be in this chapter. We're going to discuss how to move your character, and then we're going to talk about some vehicle movement, and even some vehicle combat, to be honest. It's weird, but vehicle combat is also in this chapter. Alright, so running difficulty. You have a base difficulty of 0 to run. But for each additional movement, you have to add 5. So you can move, technically you can move as many times as you want, as many times as the GM allows you to move. But you have to add 5. You do have to roll for it. If you want to move, if you have a movement of 10 meters, and you want to run 20, it's going to be a running difficulty of 5. And if you want to move 40 meters, it's going to be a running difficulty of 15. So a character that fails the running roll either covers only his move, or you might trip, depending on how bad the roll is. We go down here to swimming. Your swimming move is half of your normal move rounded up. So for a normal character, your swimming move will be 5. The base difficulty for swimming is 5. You do have to roll to swim. And if you want to move further than 5, so if you want to move double or triple or quadruple your swim speed, it's plus 5 for each movement beyond the first. And it talks a little bit here about having to hold your breath. It says if you do not prepare, so I'm guessing if you're caught by surprise, you can hold your breath for a number of seconds equal to 5 times a roll of your physique or stamina, if you have the stamina skill. If you pre-oxygenate your lungs, you get a bonus, and the maximum you can hold your breath is a roll of stamina in minutes, but you do have to have the stamina skill to do that. Climbing. Alright, so if you have the climbing skill, you can move up any surface at your normal move. And it says barring adverse environmental factors. I didn't actually bring this up, but yeah, I'm assuming easy terrain for all of these. If it's anything more than easy terrain, there's going to be an environmental modifier, but we're assuming easy terrain right now. We'll talk about the environmental modifiers here in a little bit. So the base difficulty to climb is 5. If you do not have the climbing skill, you will be moving at half of your move, rounded up. However, increasing the rate is plus 10 for each additional 1/2 of the base climbing move rounded up. So a character without the climbing skill has a base climbing move of 5, and for each additional 3 meters, because 2.5 rounded up is 3, is going to be an additional 10. And you see here it has the example. We'll just talk about that for a second. Running move of 10 meters without the climbing skill wants to move quickly up a tree. Base climbing move is 5. To increase this to 8 meters per round means a difficulty of 20. 10 to climb the tree, plus 10 to increase the movement by 1/2 or 3 meters of his base climbing move. And if you look down here, climbing a tree is considered moderate terrain. That's where that extra 5 comes from. You add 5 to the base difficulty, plus 10 to get 20. Jumping. So, vertically and horizontally, your base jumping move is 1/4 of your move. So for a person with a 10 move, it's going to be 2.5 rounded up is 3. So the average person can jump vertically and horizontally 3 meters. Base difficulty is 5. and it is plus 10 for each additional 2 meters. Although you can do a running start, it says up to 2 rounds if you pass the running difficulty. You can add plus 5 for each round. That way it takes, it can take a significant load off of the dice, having to roll. But you do have to beat the running difficulty. Short distances. We talked about this, I believe, in the last video. It's been a while, so I don't remember. You can move up to 50% of your movement rate, any movement rate, without this counting as an action. If you move 51% or more, it counts as an action. Now, that doesn't matter, because usually you don't have to roll for it. Well, if you're running, you don't have to roll for it. You do have to roll for it everywhere else. But if you're doing anything else, you would have to take the multi-action penalty if you wanted to move 51% or more of your move. And yeah, it talks about a character with base move 10 could move 5 meters on land or 2.5 meters in the water with no action penalty. Which this kind of screws you up if you're using a map, because most people are not going to have 0.5 meters on their maps. So it would be kind of weird to do that. Alright, so maximum movement. Basically, it's... this is important. Characters may perform only one movement action of each type per round, unless a special ability allows them to do otherwise. So you can't run into the ocean and then swim. You have to run into the ocean one round, and then start swimming the next round. You can't do 2 types of movement in the same round. And game masters may choose to limit the speed at which characters may travel to 4 times the move rate for each type of movement. I like that, because I feel like if 4 times the move rate would basically be sprinting. I don't think the average human would be able to go much faster than that. Accelerating and decelerating. So these are basically race rules, race or chase scenes. It's a little bit of a special rule here. The minimum increase or decrease is 2 times your character's base move for that type of movement. So if you're using the 4 times the move rate as the limiter, you can only go 20 meters per round and 40 meters per round if you have 10 move. You can't go 10 or 30. And it has the example here where a character is chasing a thief who has a move of 10. First round, she can move 20 meters. She has to roll a 5 for it. In the second round, she can increase her speed to 40, which we already know has a difficulty of 15. And even if you roll higher, you do not get to move faster. And I'm assuming that also means for 30, because the minimum is 2. So if you roll fast enough to go 30 meters per round, you can't. Not if you're doing the acceleration and the race rules, essentially. Race, chase. Alright. So if you fail your movement rate, if you fail your running roll, your movement rate is decreased by 2 times, because the minimum increase and decrease is 2 times your move. So if you fail to roll, like if you're going 40 meters and you fail to roll to maintain that 40 meters, you automatically slow down to 20. And if you fail the 20, then you go down to 0. And of course, if you're at 0 move, you're stopped. And it even says here if it's less than 0, the character trips. So I assume that if you're at 0 and you roll to move the 20 and then you fail that roll, you trip. That's the only way I can imagine that you would be at below 0. And of course we have fatigue. You just determine a suitable length of time depending on the character and existing conditions. And at a certain point, you're going to start adding fatigue modifiers. And they are cumulative. The first round beyond the maximum gets a +3 difficulty. Second round gets a +6, etc. It also says if you would like to, you can use the base difficulty of 5 and have them roll against their stamina or willpower in order to overcome their fatigue. This here just says, that a GM may add any other modifiers, other movement options. Like, yeah, we know that the GM is allowed to add extra modifiers. So the movement difficulty modifiers, we have easy terrain, which you can see what the examples are here. That's +0. Moderate terrain, +5. Rough terrain, +10. Very rough terrain, +15. Hazardous terrain, +20. Very hazardous is +25 or more. It just depends. All right. Vehicles and aerial characters. So a lot of the vehicle actions are going to work a lot like normal character actions, but it has additional stuff attached to it because they're vehicles and not characters. Flying characters that fly, they're basically going to be using the flying vehicle rules, kind of. They're obviously not vehicles, so you have to kind of use your own discretion. But the way that they move in the air, and when they do stunts in the air, they have to roll the way that a vehicle would roll. Alright, so now that we're past character movement, we're at vehicle movement. Vehicles have 5 speeds: stopped, cautious, cruising, high, and all out. You may make 1 movement action per round. This down here is a little bit confusing, but vehicles may travel between half their current speed and full current speed each level. I'm pretty sure that's just there to cover that you don't have to be going, like, you don't immediately go from stopped to your maximum move. That's not realistic. You have to speed up. You have to go from 0 to 5 to 10 to 15, etc. in order to get up to your maximum move. So that's just to cover that, I think. Rapid acceleration and deceleration are stunts, so that will be covered a little bit later. Stopped is obviously 0. You're not moving. I like how it tells you that air vehicles should be on the ground when at this level. Yeah, I imagine. Cautious, you're traveling at half your move. You do not have to roll. It says it's a free action, but that's not true. This would be. Oh wait, yes it is, because it's half of your move, so it does not require an action. Okay. I got confused for a second. Of course, terrain conditions may increase it from base 0. Air vehicles at this level must be attempting to reach a higher or lower altitude. They cannot maintain altitude at cautious. Cruising. Vehicle travels at its move. That does require an action, but it's a base difficulty of 0. And high is twice your move. You have to use a pilot. You have to roll a piloting roll, base difficulty of 5, modified by conditions. All Out is 4 times its move, and that requires a piloting roll with a base difficulty of 10, modified by existing conditions. So the characters that fly, in order to increase their movement rate, you're going to rely on the flying skill rather than the running skill, but you're going to use the same rules as the running. And even though this is obvious, it does tell you characters may not use the flying skill unless they have means of propelling themselves through the air or they are in a zero gravity environment. Stunts. Alright. For normal vehicle use or casual flying, under ideal conditions, there's no skill rolls. If you're out flying on a sunny, clear day, you don't have to worry about it. When the conditions turn less than favorable or you attempt a fancy maneuver, your piloting skill plus the vehicle's maneuverability code or his flying skill determines his success. So, and rapid acceleration and deceleration also warrant rolls, enhanced by the vehicle's maneuverability. These maneuvers have an initial difficulty of 10, adjusted based on existing conditions. And here are all of the existing conditions, stunt difficulties and modifiers. So you can read through here. If you want to make some crazy vehicle moves, you're going to have to roll real well for the stunts. And then these are the conditions. If you want to, if you remember that chart for movement difficulties from earlier, you could use that with vehicles too. Like, if it's rainy outside, it's obviously going to be harder to control, sliding on the wet asphalt as opposed to dry asphalt. So you can use those modifiers as well. And then we have, here's a fun little thing about the editing of this book. I'm not 100% sure, but I think D6 Adventure is the least edited of the D6 books, unfortunately. This isn't really that big of a deal, but it does kind of irk me a little bit. As you can tell, we have vehicle familiarity chart, and it comes down here and it gives you all these modifiers, and then it has a manual for the vehicle in a language. Nothing. So this chart got cut off at some point. So you don't have the modifier that's associated with this. I mean, again, you could just make that up, but still, like I feel like that's unnecessary to have editing errors like that. Okay. Let's see. Now that we're done with that chart, let's go down here. Alright. A vehicle or flying character may reduce or increase movement by 2 levels in 1 round, so you can go from stopped to cruising. You don't have to go to cautious first, or you can go from cruising to all out, or all out to cruising, etc. Now, if you do fail your roll, you have lost control. And if you do not hit anything that stops the vehicle, you may attempt to regain control with a base difficulty of 15 on the following round. Yeah, if you are driving or flying and you do anything else, you also have to take the multi-action penalty, because piloting or flying is an action. Unless you're going at like cruising. I don't think you need to do that. Do you have to do that if you're cruising? Because technically cruising doesn't cause an action. I think that's only if you have to make a roll for it, or if it counts as an action. I don't know. I'd have to reread that, but I think the way that I'm reading it now, it says regardless of the situation. So maybe if you do literally anything else while you're operating the vehicle, you do have to roll for it. So it's 5. Ramming and sideswiping vehicles. So if you want to ram or sideswipe during a car chase scene, we do have the rolls over here. So sideswiping is a base difficulty of 10, or a modifier of 10, I guess, because they're probably going to have to add that to your piloting roll. And where's ramming? Ramming is also a plus 10, but for some reason it's down here under condition instead of stunt. I don't know why. Alright. So you make a piloting roll that includes the vehicle's maneuverability, and all that does is every vehicle has a specific maneuverability attached to it, and that the higher the higher your maneuverability, the easier the vehicle is to control. So most of the time, if you have a decent piloting, you're not going to have to worry about passing these. But if you're driving something like a school bus, that's going to be a lot harder to control than just an average like two-door vehicle, two-door car. So you fail the roll, the vehicle misses and spins. So this is supposed to be, I assume it's supposed to be land and sea vehicles, but it doesn't, or land and water, not land and sea. Land and water vehicles turn up to 180 degrees and lose power, while space vehicles continue spinning. Alright, and then this is very costly, because the character has to spend 1 round starting the vehicle, if it's a land or water vehicle, or regaining control, if it's a space vehicle, and then another round getting it back in the right direction. So the way this reads to me is that you wouldn't be able to actually start moving again, and by moving I mean like chasing the person that you tried to sideswipe or ram, for 3 actions. You would have to spend the first 2 just regaining control or starting it, and then getting back in the right direction, and then you could move. So, if you succeed, you keep the vehicle reasonably straight, and you may try for another sideswipe or ram on the next turn. And of course, it tells you here, right here, that if you use an air vehicle to ram or sideswipe, you automatically lose control, and about the best thing you can hope for is to make a successful landing. Both vehicles do take damage from this, and that will be explained later. Vehicle attacking and dodging. Just like, we haven't gone over it yet, but just like characters, the base difficulty to hit a vehicle is 10. It's modified by distance and the scale modifier. We haven't talked about the scale modifier either, but the scale modifier, basically, things that are big are easier to hit. So if you are a person shooting at a car, the car is bigger than you, so it's easier to hit. Which is basically what this is saying. A person is shooting a car has a +6 to his attack total. The scale modifier also reduces, it either increases or reduces damage. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Because a car is a scale of 6, and a human is a scale of 0. That's the reason he has a +6 to his attack total. But two cars that are both scale 6 do not have a scale modifier because they're the same size. So when a car attacks another car, there is no modifier for that. And again, it talks about if the driver wants to fire a weapon, he must make an easy piloting roll, modified by the vehicle's maneuverability code. and his marksmanship roll, and he has to take the multi-action penalty. Passengers obviously don't have to have any penalties to shoot. Alright. So in order to dodge, because we haven't gone over combat yet, I figured we would talk about movement before we talked about combat, but there's a lot of combat stuff in here for some reason. Characters use the dodge skill in order to move out of the way of, or that's not really what it is. When a character uses the dodge skill, they try to predict where the attack is going to be, and they try to move out of that range. They're not actually like dodging a bullet. They are predicting where the person is going to shoot, and then they move away from where they think the bullet's going to go. So, and then that's the same way for cars. Instead of using the dodge skill, because cars don't have skills, you use your piloting skill plus the vehicle's maneuverability code, and you use the same defense rules for characters as you do for vehicles. So if it's a partial defense, whatever you roll becomes the new difficulty to hit you, and if it is a full defense, whatever you roll plus 10 is what it takes to hit you. So you become a lot harder to hit if you use your whole round to defend. And that combat difficulty is in effect until the character's turn in the next round. Which means if the enemy goes before you, you don't have a chance to do this. So the difficulty to hit you would still be 10. Vehicle damage. Alright. Basically, it's just a chart. Modify the damage total or the damage resistance by the scale modifier. Yeah. A vehicle's damage resistance equals its toughness plus the value of any armor. Most vehicles don't have armor, so it's not a big deal. Character points or fate points may not be spent on this roll because you're technically rolling for the car, you're not rolling for your character. When your vehicle collides with something else, you have to know how fast it was going when the collision happened and modify it based on that speed. And then you also modify it based on circumstances. We'll see the sidebar here in a minute. So, should two vehicles be involved, both take damage. So I'm assuming if you're stopped and this has to have something hit you, which gives a 2D modifier. But the others, obviously the damage goes up quite a bit. If you're at all out, you're going to be taking 10D, that's quite a bit. Collision damage modifier. Basically, it depends on where you hit and what you hit. And crew and passenger injuries, basically you just there's a chart down here for that, but it says adjust it based on how much of the passengers is exposed. Like motorcycles or canoes offer very little protection to your character. If you don't know how to calculate wounds, pretty much wounds is the way that you have to do vehicles, even if you're using body points for characters, because vehicles don't have body points. So you have to, the character rolls the damage that they're doing to your vehicle, and then you roll your resistance, and then as long as your resistance is higher than their damage, nothing happens. Your vehicle might get scraped, or the paint might get, might get a bump or something. But if the damage is higher than the resistance roll, you have to look and see how much damage the vehicle takes, and there's corresponding modifiers down here, which will Once it gets to light damage, you're going to start... and these are cumulative, by the way. So every time you take light... Every time that you roll, for instance, like a light damage... the vehicle loses another 1d for maneuverability. So if your maneuverability gets all the way down to 0, your top move speed gets decreased by 1 level. So it could take several light attacks, and then you would lose all of your maneuverability and start losing speed. And of course, it only gets worse as you go further down. And the passengers suffer. It's obviously pretty simple. Just divide by 4, divide by 2, you know, all that mess. And if a vehicle is destroyed, you take all the damage and the vehicle is irreparably destroyed. Leaping out of a vehicle. So, if you've noticed, this book, the D6 system in general, uses kilometers. This is the only instance where they kind of switched it up here. It's not the only instance of miles in the book, but this kind of just leaps out at you. And that's because this is an error. This is supposed to be 10 kilometers per hour, not 5 miles per hour. So, you know, if I could write on here, I would write 10 kilometers per hour, but I can't. And if you leap out, it's a jumping roll. If you just, you know, I guess roll out of the vehicle, it's just a very easy acrobatics or reflexes roll. Or very easy if jumping. And then if the vehicle's moving faster than that, the base difficulty becomes 15, with +1 for every 10 kilometers per hour the vehicle is traveling, rounded down. And you take damage from the fall, at a rate of 1 damage for every 15 kilometers per hour the vehicle is moving, rounded up. Minus the result points from the roll. I know we talked about it last round, or last video. The result points is just the amount of points that you roll over the difficulty. So if we go over here to the example, the driver of the car traveling at 90 kilometers per hour decided to leave the vehicle before it hit a tree. The difficulty would be 24. It would be 15 plus 9 for the 90. She would also take 6 points of damage, because 90 divided by 15 is 6, unless she's sufficiently succeeded at her jump. So the initial difficulty is 24. She would have to roll a 30 in order to not take any damage from the jump. So hopefully she's really good at that. I'm assuming because it says jump that she'd have to roll her jumping skill. Then repairing a vehicle. This basically just says that it depends on the amount of damage and the availability of parts and tools. See the repair skill description in the example skill difficulties chapter for more difficulty and modifier suggestions. Alright. And that is the end of this chapter. Because we were talking about vehicles, why don't we go look at vehicles? Let's go over here to equipment. We're going to skip several chapters. And I'm going to try not to scroll too fast. We can see gear here that you're able to purchase. There's examples of the gear, or not examples, but descriptions. We have some holy items. One of the funniest things to me is that the Ring of Power magical artifact is actually incorrect. The increased attribute special ability does not work like this. But that's not really what we're talking about right now. Protective gear, woven metal fabric, all this stuff. Some of this stuff says that it's not available in a pulp fiction setting, but it doesn't really matter. You can have whatever you want. Alien technology. Then we've got special ammunition, which is basically like silver bullets. Alright. Talks about how the game describes different firearms. We have all of the different firearms that are in the game. And then we get down here to explosives. Got some dynamite, grenades, etc. Melee weapons. Missile and thrown weapons. And we finally get all the way on the last page of chapter. I didn't want to scroll super fast because I didn't want to make anybody like motion sick. So on the last page of chapter 14 is the vehicles. Let's just do a car because we know that cars are pretty easy to come by in most settings. The one thing I don't like about it is that they have very odd number, for the most part, movement. This is the move per round, but this is their regular speed. So in a car can go 35 kilometers per hour. That's their regular move. And that translates to 49 meters per round. So, passengers, 3 to 4. Toughness, 4D plus 1. So this is what you would roll in order to resist damage. And the maneuverability is 2D. So you would roll your piloting skill plus 2D in order to do stunts or just maintain control of a vehicle, etc. So you don't see any body points on here because there's no... You do have to use the wounds rules even if you don't like them for vehicles. Because they do not have body points. I guess you could homebrew something, but... Yeah, cruising speed. It says cruising speed, but I don't think that's right. Vehicle move. Oh, yeah, it is right. For some reason, I thought cruising was half the move. Never mind. So, that's movement. I don't see any questions in the chat, so thank you for watching, and have a good day.